This meeting is being recorded.
Okay. For those of you online, please mute. We do have a raised hand function, so if you do want to speak, feel free and raise your hand. Oh, there we go. Right on. My apologies. This is the first in-person meeting I've been to in quite some time. So how's that? Too tall. All right, sit. There we go. All right, got a place. So, yeah, again, welcome to the October Haight-Ashbury Neighborhood Council meeting. My name is James Sword, board member of HANC for quite some time. I want to thank Flywheel for hosting us. This evening, we're going to talk, as the article stated, the recalls of the Board of Education seem to have solved little or nothing. And so we wanted to kind of go back, going back to the recalls, whether it was the Board of Education or the district attorney. HANC took a stance that we did not support recalls. It's not that black and white, right? It was a very complicated time. But we generally took the stance that we didn't support recalls. As individuals, some of us probably supported recalls. As a group, on principle, we felt that recalls, especially the way they were being managed, were undermining a lot of what democracy is about. And so that was a little frustrating from our end. Before I get too into it and start talking, I'll mention a little bit, cover topics. Yeah, I'll get to announcements in a moment. Just laying out real quickly, we have a representative from San Francisco Education Alliance. It's an organization, I'll let Noah describe them in a few minutes. Yeah, an organization of parents here in San Francisco advocating for schools, kids, public education. Also, we'll talk a little bit about UESF. Many of you probably know that last night there was a vote to authorize a strike, which does not mean that a strike is going to happen, but I'll talk a little bit about that. And also we'll cover a little bit about SEIU. Oh, great. Have a seat. Are you Shelley?
I am Shelley.
All right. Welcome.
Thank person and Haight-Ashbury resident.
Well, I am relieved because I was going to talk about it, but you're going to do a much better job. But before we jump into that, I do want to open up to announcements. Is there anybody online? I know, Tess, you had an announcement. Do you need this microphone or we got, okay.
This microphone is for the benefit of the people on Zoom. So if it will not make me louder. You may have heard that UC is looking at purchasing or merging with the Dignity Mercy Hospital system. And the first meeting that is asking for community input will be on October 25th, Wednesday, at 5:30 at the Holiday Inn, 1500 Van Ness Avenue, and parking will be covered. So if you're interested, a lot of people want to make sure that Dignity Mercy Hospital right across the Panhandle will still provide a community service focus. And hopefully they'll get better equipment and so on too out of the deal. So just letting you know, there will also be a meeting on November 7th, I understand, and then probably one on Zoom. And so you can contact C for more information. If he wants it from me tonight, I'll give it to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Tess. Any other announcements, Peter?
I'd like to make an announcement.
Oh. Okay, hold on. Let me have Peter, and then we'll go to the online.
Hi, I'm Peter Warfield, co-founder of Library Users Association. We're independent of any library. Just for your information, the Park branch, which is just a few blocks away, is having a celebration of its 114th anniversary of service on October the 28th, 1 to 5. I'm not a spokesperson for the library, but just thought you'd like to know. It's also a case that HANC and Library Users Association and some neighborhood folks helped actually make the place better when they had planning for it. We helped keep the large open space without having a big workspace for the employees right at the door, but rather they ended up moving it back so that it would still have that sense of the wonderful open space when you walk in. Hank and us and other folks worked on, for example, the tables are still the original tables, 100 years old at the time, now 114. If you look underneath the tables, you'll see the original wood, which is now covered in a smoother surface. Mid-century modern chairs was a big issue with one of the library activists, Deecha Bowler, and so those ended up being kept as well. So I'm pleased to say that we and Hank and other people helped make Park Branch Library better and partly what you see today. So that's Saturday from 1 to 5 on the 28th of October. Thanks.
And I'm gonna have somebody online and then I'll have you. Okay, go ahead online.
Okay. I'm online. Nick, I just want to bring to everyone's attention that the Land Use and Transportation Committee of the Board of Supervisors will be holding a third hearing on an extremely damaging bill sponsored by London Breed, Dorsey, and Engardio to demolish rent control housing in San Francisco that I'm absolutely convinced by any doubt will create more homelessness and do more damaging to our limited affordable housing complex. It's going to be this coming Monday, October 16th. The committee meeting starts at 1:30 at City Hall. It's item number 7 in the agenda of this committee. And I urge people to call in and or be there. I will be calling in to oppose this legislation. It should be shut down, stopped from happening. We must not demolish affordable, rent control, irreplaceable housing in San Francisco. Thank you.
All right.
Hi, everybody. I just wanted to announce that our good friend and Hank member, Louise Dunlap, passed away this Monday. She'd been a member for quite some time, and was the supervisor, the head of the senior group for the Coalition for a Complete Community. And she was a really fabulous person. I've known her for about 19 years. We're acquaintances when I moved to North Panhandle. She was very active in the anti-war movement, the Vietnam anti-war movement back in the 60s. She was a member of the Students for a Democratic Society. She got arrested. She was born in Portland. She eventually moved to Colorado and worked in the office of Senator Lamb. And then later on, she developed lupus and moved out to San Francisco to be with her brother Henry. And she's been involved in housing issues and senior housing issues for quite some time. So she was a wonderful person and is going to be missed dearly. And I hope more people will find out about this. Anyway, that's it.
Thank you. Yeah, that was on my item list. Very much going to miss her. Okay. So we are going to one more item and then get started unless any hands online or inside. All right, Tess.
Okay, next meeting will be our annual meeting and we'll be electing our board of directors for December through November next year. And We are presenting the slate tonight. And we are also opening the door, so anybody who wants to nominate themselves or someone else to serve on the board, you are welcome to do so. info@hanc-sf.org. We are renominating David Wu, who has been our president this year. For vice president, we're nominating Nate Horrell. Recording secretary, Bruce Wolf. Up there in the front, holding things together. Treasurer, Kristen Evans. Membership chair, Richard Wolf. Housing and land use chair in the back, Calvin Welch. And then there are several people who would be members at large. Myself, Tess Wellborn. Christian Vase, Daniel McVeigh, Tab Buckner, and Karen Fishkin. So you have to be a member for at least 30 days. So this would be your golden moment if you wanted to vote in the board election next month. And that's all.
All right, great. Thank you, Tess. All right, so we'll get started. All of a sudden, all my mind goes blank. Don't worry, I got a microphone. I'll pass it along. You're not under the gun yet. Take some deep breaths. I know Noah hasn't done public speaking in a while. I used to do a lot of public speaking, and yet I get nervous every time. So again, welcome everybody. My name is James Sword, resident, parent, born and raised San Francisco, alumnus of San Francisco Unified. So I'm invested and very much support a lot of what's going on. So, you know, I've been thinking of how to frame a lot of this. You know, on the surface, we have SEIU 1021 who voted to authorize a strike, and I'll hand it over to Shelley in a little bit to talk a little more about why, what led to this, what conditions their employees and members have been experiencing. I'll talk a little bit about UESF. My wife is a former UESF member. We have some friends who are deeply involved in UESF. And so I'll talk a little bit about that. And then we have Noah Sloss and Brandy Markman from the San Francisco Education Alliance, which is a parent group focused on public education here in San Francisco. But I'd like to take a little bit of a step back. You know, looking at the summer of 2023, I feel like while there's a local movement happening, we're part of a much larger movement that's going on in the United States. You know, last summer, the UPS employees negotiated, almost ended up in a strike, but they were able to negotiate a contract. The UAW, United Auto Workers, are currently in a strike, a very large strike. And from what I understand, there are other unions that are looking at potential strikes in 2024. Now, how did all of this come about? My armchair quarterback perspective is during COVID, a lot of people realized that they weren't necessarily valued to the level of work that they were putting in. In some ways, you know, I remember when COVID started in March of 2020 and schools shut down, and I know there are other parents who can probably relate. It was, oh, it's going to be a couple of weeks, and then, oh my gosh, it's going on a really long time, and this is hard. I saw a lot of people talk really highly of teachers, saying teachers are underpaid, teachers work really hard, we have to do whatever we can for teachers. Fast forward a year and a half, and it became a little less supportive in many ways. And some people turned on teachers, some people continued to support them, and it was a really difficult time. Teachers were fighting to stay out of the classroom until they were able to be vaccinated. I know that isn't necessarily you know, that some people supported that, some people didn't, but that was from what I had heard, why teachers were really holding back until about a year in. So much of what's happening today is really a culmination of years in the making. And let me just make sure I've got my microphone on. Okay, good. All right, good. And so in looking at how the last few years have led to where we are now, I think it's, oh, no worries. All right, being made a co-host, Nate. And so, you know, looking back, reflecting back on the recalls that happened in the last couple of years, you know, I joke that, you know, since Chesa was recalled, I've actually had 2 catalytic converters stolen from my car. True story. Didn't happen under Chesa, happened under Jenkins. I bring that up kind of in jest because it's completely ridiculous in my mind if somebody was to say, well, crime is worse because of Jenkins. But people, you know, a lot of things were going on. A lot of outside money was coming in and starting to influence. San Francisco, you know, Chris Daly once said that San Francisco politics is like having a knife fight in a phone booth, right? And San Francisco can get pretty ugly when it comes to politics. My theory is that a lot of it has to do with the amount of money that can be made in San Francisco politics. And as a result, lots of money comes flowing in locally, but also from a national level, trying to influence local politics. And some of the money that was coming in supporting and pushing some of these recalls, I remember 5 years ago talking about the Dean Preston versus London Breed election in D5. Maybe it was like 8 years ago. It's all a blur now. My kid is 9 and 6, so you parents can relate. No sense of time. But there was a lot of money coming in attacking Dean Preston from folks who were on the UCSF board and people who were at a national level. And as we looked at the recall, some people reflecting back, some people in the middle of the recall, there was a realization that a lot of this money was coming from outside interests. A lot of it was coming from inside interests as well. And when there's that much money to be made, and you know, there's something more going on. People are starting to use that money to lean on people's fears and worries and concerns. And the recalls, in many ways, were a culmination of that. You know, I bring up the recall of Chesa Boudin, just like the Board of Education. In many ways, a lot of things that were brought up during the recall of the 3 members, Ali Collins, Fauga Moliga, and Gabriela Lopez, a lot of things I was hearing were, you know, there were a lot of little issues, a lot of issues that people had, you know, had strong feelings about, and they ended up getting recalled. And here we are, is it 18 months later, and very little has improved. And in many ways, it's actually gotten worse. After the recall happened, Mayor Breed appointed 3 people onto the Board of Education and in essence had control of the board. That board hired the superintendent, Dr. Wayne, who is currently the superintendent in schools. And you know, in those 18 months, teachers' paychecks have been more and more inconsistent. People have had $2,000 deductions that were unexpected. There were a lot of things that were happening. Teachers were not getting paid in some cases. Teachers' health coverage was lapsing in other cases. There were significant issues that have happened in the last 18 months. And fast forward to last night, when UESF had over 3,000 people vote whether to or not authorize a strike, and it was 97% in favor of authorizing the strike for UESF. Now, taking a step back, that does not mean that the schools are going to have a strike. It doesn't mean that teachers are going to strike, but it means that UESF can now call a strike and it might happen. Whereas before, if they had not authorized the strike, then a strike could not happen. So this week, interestingly enough, you know, I don't know. I don't believe there's a lot of coincidences in San Francisco politics, but maybe I'm just paranoid and cynical. But this week, Dr. Wayne, Superintendent Wayne, sent out an email talking about how the district was negotiating in good faith. In talking to some UESF members that I know, the way they described it was that the email was misleading. It was not, in fact, a $10,000 increase in salary. The UESF is asking for a $12,000 salary increase across the board. By the way, San Francisco teachers are lower paid than virtually every district in the Bay Area. So they're asking for $12,000 increase in salary across the board. The district offered a one-time $10,000 bonus. The district is also increasing, or their proposal, the district is increasing medical costs that could be in excess of $1,000 a month. And so you take a one-time bonus and an increase in medical costs versus what the teachers were asking of a $12,000 salary increase and then an 8% increase the following year, in addition to safeguards related to financial mismanagement, which I'm assuming has to do with Empower and how teachers were getting paid. And it all came to an overwhelming vote to authorize a strike. So that's a little background on the teachers union, a little bit about what's been happening, but I want to introduce Shelley Weiner. Any relation to Scott Weiner?
No.
Okay.
Good check.
All right. I figured you probably had.
Because those big signs would say, I think cut out Scott part and would say S. Wiener.
Oh.
Yeah,
So Shelley Weiner is representing SEIU 1021, which is the union that represents many of the important employees within the San Francisco Unified School District that keep schools running that people don't really think about on a daily basis. So please tell us a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, I hope everybody online can hear me. You can just tell me if not. So in addition to being currently the secretary at Alamo Elementary School in the Richmond, I am the secretary for our chapter of SEIU. Service Employees International is a very old union and it's totally member-led. We have some staff because people have to do things, but it's always up to the members. So whereas UE, which is also through their members, took a vote yesterday, they have to take a second vote. We only need a single vote to authorize the strike. And another totally separate point I want to make is the superintendent's messages are a way to control the narrative of what is going on, because what the public hears influences public opinion. And he has a good platform for getting his message out there. I was already told that yesterday, Mayor Breed called the SEIU offices because she doesn't want there to be any strike. Not because she loves us, but because it's going to look bad on her watch and she goes up for election very soon. So I was never as cynical as I have become in this entire year of negotiating with the district. I came from a full day of negotiating today, and I have to tell you, it is exhausting. One of our articles to negotiate has to do with salary. One of the items in there had to do with student nutrition, the women and men who served the students lunch. Long time ago, everything was cooked in-house. And then when they restructured and outsourced the meals so that they're only like ready to eat heat meals, they realigned the job functions. So instead of having 8 levels of payment, the leads only had 5. And right now the leads at the 5th level make the same amount as the people under them at the 8th level. And yet in negotiations, they strike out, draw lines through, are asking us to please let us have 3 more payment levels to scale for the leads who control what goes on inside each kitchen space. And the district is working hard to bring back in-house kitchens So there's more and more responsibility. It's the high school and the middle school first, the elementary schools last. So we face some very daunting tasks. SEIU represents all the clerks and secretaries, all the janitors, custodians, all of the people who work in the kitchens, from the chef, the assistant chef, the cook, the lead student nutrition worker, and then the lunch helpers. Many of the people at the lower end, English is not their first language. They come from other cultures. They are not of a mind to speak up like we are here in this room. When we try to tell them that they won't have a penalty for speaking up, for voting, they're afraid. Many times things are not translated in Chinese or in Spanish in a way that they can understand and internalize what it means to be a respected, integral part of the school district. Basically, we wind up feeling like a bunch of throwaways. And there isn't anybody on the bargaining team that wouldn't say that we feel that way also. The burden of everything. The school needs to be clean. The school needs to have the phones answered. Everybody wanted security at the door. They don't hire extra people to be a receptionist and answer the door. I wind up like not able to move from my chair between the phone and the door. It's kind of crazy. Schools used to have 1.5 or 2 secretaries. Since the 70s, when there was tremendous white flight from the city, in order to keep the classrooms properly staffed with teachers, the district cut away in all other areas. Whereas once there were 700 custodians, there are now barely 300. They cannot do the work that was needed to be done to keep the school safe and clean as it was done before. There was a directive not more than a month ago where they told the people who work at the 555 Franklin Street, our central office, or 135 Van Ness, that since there's a shortage of custodians, they can empty their garbage cans themselves. Sorry, come on here, just a moment. We're real people, you know? And one of our problems with the incredible escalating cost of healthcare is that many people who provide student meals don't work 4 hours a day, but they are entitled to health coverage. But when the portion that they have to pay is basically going to exceed the amount of money they take home, there's something very, very wrong with this picture. And so those are the sort of items that I'm up against. My president having given me a little list to make sure I don't forget anything. I'll just clue you in. Right. So, right. We are the lowest paid of all the district employees. There are about 7 other unions, Local 21, if Petit, our engineers and computer people. We have the labor trades, carpenters, plumbers, those sort of people. And then 2 or 3 other, International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, several other smaller unions. If we were to go out on strike, the teachers union has given their members the option to either honor the picket line or not. If they go out on strike, we are very strongly aligned to honor their picket line. I know that, what are truck drivers called?
UAW? No, Teamsters.
The Teamsters are going to honor the picket. We don't know what things like MTA drivers would do. In other cities where there have been school district strikes, the school buses don't pull up to the school for the middle and the high school kids. They take them, but they won't go near the school building in honoring their fellow unionists striking. So we'll have to see where that plays out. Our contract expired on June 30th, 2020. And during that time, COVID was roaring along. Custodians were tasked with cleaning the buildings without fully understanding what protocols were necessary for their personal health and safety. The student nutrition workers served meals to any child in the city who came to any of the designated sites, putting them in contact with an arbitrary number of people every day. Since that time, they still are dedicated. We are all devoted to the students and to the families. We feel that management is the problem. Two people in a meeting last week at separate points said to me, it's as though the school district forgot they serve the people of the city. They think they're a giant corporation and everybody at the top makes a very handsome salary while everyone at the bottom doesn't get anything. So we did ask for 16% going back at least 3 years because we are trying to get up to city parity. Right now, city workers make 20 to 25% more than people in the same jobs working for the school district. One of the reasons we don't have consistent staffing is that as soon as someone has 6 months experience with the school district, they leave to work for the city and they get 20% more. I don't know why the district can't figure out that that's a problem, because it is a problem. So schools can go sometimes without being cleaned if the main custodian calls in sick, because elementary schools only have 2 custodians. So how much can they do? They can clean the bathrooms, they can wash the floor in the cafeteria. They can't do everything that 2 people over the course of a 16-hour work day, because it's 2 8-hour shifts, could manage. So we're very frustrated and upset about that. I don't have to tell you about inflation. I can tell you, though, that it's my understanding the state gives the school district money, cost of living increase money they're supposed to pass on to us. We didn't see anything. I think it's a total of 17 or 18% over the past 4 years. We haven't seen anything. What did they do with the money?
So real quickly, just to make sure I understand what you just said. So the state gave the city money to keep up your salaries with inflation, but nobody in SEIU 1021 saw that money?
Yes, but I don't know necessarily that teachers in the same way saw the money. I know they had the 6% increase last year, but when you try to add it all up, I'm not sure. I don't do their numbers. I also know that people who receive Social Security last year got a very nice bump, and this coming year are going to get at least 3% more, 3.1, 3.4. So why not us? Why not us? It's a very hard bunch of task work we've been assigned. We've been through the entire contract. We will be meeting again tomorrow because the district is scared.
And I think we'll open up questions at the end to give people an opportunity to ask specific questions. One question the advantage of running the meeting. One question that I have is I heard recently the administration gave themselves a raise.
Yes, over
Okay.
the summer. I don't know if it was in August or in September. I could have to look at the board. They don't say specifically whom, but they come out of closed session saying that they have approved the salaries, which implies increases of whatever set group of people they're talking about. So they have deputy superintendents and heads, which were formerly called chiefs, but that word was politically incorrect. And all those people have, yes, received, I believe, between 12 and 15% raises this year.
Okay.
Talking about Empower, I want to tell you that Empower is an add-on piece of software that the district purchased because human resources needed new software for hiring. So they used SAP SuccessFactors, and somebody had cobbled on a payroll to an HR system. $47 million later, it is still not right. One of my teachers, because I prepare the payroll for my site, came to me 2 Fridays ago. And she said, I never look at it. It's been fine. But in the category where you see like how much they pay for health insurance or they paid for, their portion, every month since this started in 2022, they pay state disability for me of $44,000. At December, it said it was like $500,000 total. So of course, we don't really know that amount of money got turned over to the state, but we do know there's something very wrong with software that has that kind of a glitch. Her portion, her salary to take home was all fine. So it wasn't me. I can't understand how one person would be somehow in the computer treated differently. I know a lot about software and systems. My husband works for city and county and does a lot of that kind of software stuff. They don't have problems like that.
Hmm.
It's okay. And then the last story I'll tell you is when you work school term, I work school term, which is 2 weeks before the children start, and then 2 days after school ends. We don't get paid in the summer when we don't work, and we're hourly employees. Our health premium says that we are school term employees, except some years it says it's 23 biweekly payments. Sometimes it's 21 biweekly payments. Sometimes it's 22 biweekly payments. And in 2020, I brought up that since 2019, they've been taking extra payments out because they can't, I don't know what they're doing. And so now this is my 5th year where when I came back early, and you can come back early like 1 day into a pay period, they take out premium because the software only codes that when you clock time, then you need to pay premium. Now, I am not a genius. I am not an IT person, and I can understand what's going on that's wrong. But I would like my money back. So we are still fighting very big issues, most of which don't go back that far as my one condition, but it might not just be me. We try to ask to have a global audit because it could be all of the people, which is mostly the food service workers and the clerks who work school term, who might have been overpaying all this time. When I say, can I please have the annual premium for my health insurance? No one answers me. I say, would you buy house insurance or car insurance if you didn't know the annual or semi-annual premium? Silence. So there's not even any way to know if the amounts of money deducted add up to the correct total or not. Anyway, those are just some samples of issues that we're trying to iron out. We feel very strongly that it's not just the 16%, which we would like to receive. We're also asking for other adjustments in terms of floating holidays, recognizing certain, like, you know, how we recently picked up Juneteenth. There are other holiday, legal holiday issues. There are work environment issues, like when there are encampments outside of school, whose responsibility and whose safety is concerned for cleaning it up. And we're in the thick of it. And yeah, I'll pass it on or
Well,
answer questions either.
Real quickly, what is the salary, I would say, average salary of, let's say, a janitor or a secretary at SSF Unified?
Okay, secretaries have 5 steps. Some people get bilingual premium. Secretaries on the average probably make on 45, maybe $50,000 because we have so much turnover. There's a bigger of a lower end on the scale.
So on a $50,000 salary, 16% is approximately $7,000, 8,000.
Yeah,
Okay.
100,000, it would be
Okay.
16. Right, but if the health premium, okay, health premium particularly went up for families. So if you are a single parent and you have more than one child, the premiums have gone up so exorbitantly that once you're done with paying the taxes, Social Security, your rent, I don't know how you can pay for your portion of the health insurance anymore. I mean, it's like every 2 weeks, $300.
And question for the audience, does anybody know San Francisco's minimum wage? I do, because I just
18
looked it
something
up.
or other.
It's going up this year, but it's $20.18. So that's approximately 40 odd thousand. So in many cases, the folks who are represented by SEIU 1021 are making little more than minimum wage and asking for a 16% increase. And this is something I don't know, so I am going to ask the audience for sure. I know that the state of California, we have, or at least San Francisco has a minimum wage scale over the next couple of years. Does anybody know what that end number is? No. Okay. I guess my point being that, you know, in many ways, they're asking for, in my opinion, a very reasonable amount that is not even keeping up with city minimum wage in many ways. So
So in some ways, we are thinking it's almost as though the district would like to go into receivership and blame it on the unions and say, well, they couldn't accommodate, our finances have been terrible. It's upsetting. I want to also leave you with this information that we got from Dr. Wayne, our superintendent, comes from the Hayward Unified School District. The SEIU representative for Hayward shared with us that he has very big political ambitions, like to become the California Department of Education superintendent.
Tony Thurman's
Yes,
job.
he would like to take Dr. Thurman's seat. So when we see what he does or what he says, a lot of it is in a much bigger picture of a political play, bigger than I ever thought about. I have a degree in theater and lighting design, and then I worked in advertising and insurance, and then I worked for the school district. And so I am not a player like that, but I'm in the thick of it, and we hope to have community understanding and support for what a hard position we're in.
Well, thank you. Appreciate you can, we'll take just a moment. I'm gonna bring in the San Francisco Education Alliance. So Brandy, I see you arrived. Feel free and come up. What's that? Yeah, she can sit right here. Have a seat. All right. Here. Yeah, either way. And so, many of, a little background and why this topic is kind of interest for me. My mom, lifelong letter carrier, union member. I remember at the age of 7 in Las Vegas, walking a picket line in like 106-degree heat. I remember my mom getting into battles with her family when we ended up trying to go into a restaurant that was a picket line. Everybody has to make their own decision. In my family, and my mom recently passed, I know that we cannot cross a picket line. But I recognize that not everybody has that ability because life is very complicated. But that kind of is one of the things that really brings a passion to me, and why, in many ways, I'm always trying to support UESF, SEIU 21, among other unions that are affected. So if it does get to the point where a strike is called, it'll be the first time since I was very small. 44 years, I heard today, is when the last strike happened, which oddly enough was a couple years after my mom was in the San Francisco letter carrier strike, National Association of Letter Carriers. So great. Bruce, are you able to bring up the PDF? Yeah. So I want to introduce our next speakers, our next guests. We have Brandy Markman and Noah Sloss, who helped start the San Francisco Education Alliance, Education Alliance. Okay, and it's a parent organization, like I mentioned before, of parents with kids within San Francisco Unified. I'll let them talk a little more as to why, how, etc. We have some slides that they're going to present and give a really good background, kind of an overview of the web of San Francisco politics. And let me offer you some more water. So let's take a moment as Bruce gets the presentation up, and I'll get you all some water. Do you know, the question was, who represents the pre-K teachers? Or UESF as well. Okay, thank you. Are paras part of UESF as well? Okay. Okay.
As a psychologist.
Can't hear you.
Sorry, that here. Here you go. You can
Hi.
say it again.
I just said, United Educators represents preschool teachers, TK teachers, social workers, nurses, maybe parent liaisons, as well as the teachers. And then there are the principals who are represented by United Administrators, which only is for the teachers, principals at sites, not anybody above that in administration who might have just been promoted, but they don't have more credentials. They no longer become part of a union. They're at-will workers.
Great, thank you. Here's some more. I'm gonna hand, and Bruce, did these? No, that one's hers. I just gave you a new one. Yeah. Both of them will work at the same time, or is there gonna be feedback if they each have a microphone? Okay, great. So why don't you tell us a little background of SF Education Alliance as we get the presentation up, and then we'll get started. Feel free to introduce yourselves.
Yeah, my name's Noah Sloss. I'm a
So real quickly, you'll have to speak up. So the microphone is basically for the people online. The folks here.
try again. Noah Sloss. I'm a SFUSD parent. My kid is in third grade. And yeah, I'm a member of the organizing committee of the San Francisco Education Alliance, established February 2023. So we're pretty new. But I think we have a lot of experience.
Right. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Is that working? All right, everybody on Zoom, hear me? My name is Brandy Markman. I am a San Francisco Unified Public School parent. I live in the Richmond district in D1. I've lived in San Francisco for about 20 years. I have a child in middle school. And I know some of you, I was formerly co-chair of San Francisco Berniecrats, which is an Our Revolution organization. I'll talk a little more about Our Revolution, but the need became clear to me and other parents. And we not only work with SFUSD, we also have a city college instructor. One of our founding members was a city college student, because there's such a link, right, between SFUSD and city college. And we need both to be healthy. We need both to be well funded to really have a vibrant public education system in San Francisco. Looks like our slides are ready.
How should I advance the slide? Just help Bruce. Right, do you have, or is this a clicker? No, do you guys have a clicker? No.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So yeah, of course you should care about public education, but in case, maybe you don't have kids, you don't like kids.
We all like.
Yeah. So yeah, some other reasons. It's one of the few parts of our lives that is not privatized. Ideally, it's a way to build a united community. There's a lot of billionaires who are very interested in public education, and they have some very specific ideas of what it should be and shouldn't be. The school board can be a stepping stone to higher office. People know people who have been on the school board and have moved on to city supervisor, and then to higher office from there. And yeah, it can be like a sandbox for experiments in public education, and even just like organizing donor networks and things like that. Next slide, please. Yeah, I just thought this image was pretty good. Disrupt San Francisco. Second, pointing out disrupt. Public education is one of them. There's a lot of ed tech companies out there, ed tech startups, and there's also the real estate industry. Always looking for some real estate. And I think before we move on, I just want to, I think the story we're trying to tell, or what we're trying to tell tonight, is a different narrative than what you might have heard if you were reading the Chronicle these past years. Yeah, it's a story about billionaires with specific ideologies, anti-union, anti-public school, or public anything. The market is the solution to everything. They're pro-charter, pro-real estate. And they funded a recall, and they're funding nonprofits with full-time staff working to change the politics of our city and dismantle our public schools. The story with some different characters, polished professionals who are working methodically to close neighborhood schools, lay off teachers and staff, replace them with apps maybe, and win next year's elections, including the school board. Yeah, I'm gonna go through a bunch of information, but that's I think the main point we want to get is a different story, a different perspective on what's been happening the past few years. Next slide, please. Okay, these are some screenshots of Twitter, and it's a different organization that's not us, called SF Parents. And kind of going like counterclockwise. So starting in 2020, they were pushing for reopening schools, going back to in-person, all the way back in October of 2020, first months of the pandemic. And they started a petition to bring kids back into classrooms by the end of 2020. So before any vaccines were even available. And that's how we think they built their list. A lot of people signed that petition. There were a lot of parents that were frustrated with having to work from home and having to deal with their kid and getting them to do homework. It was not easy for anyone. So they channeled that energy, got people to sign this petition, and built their list. Then in 2021, there's a tweet kind of blaming the union, the teachers union, for not reopening the schools, not bringing kids back in the classroom sooner, kind of painting them as being selfish, protecting themselves while harming the education. Because some parents like me didn't agree with that. We were wanted to stay safe. We wanted our kids to stay safe. We wanted teachers to stay safe. So, but this was a lot of the energy that was channeled into the recall. Why, why were you stuck at home for all this time? It's these people. It's the union, but also the Board of Education members. They directed all of that energy towards them. And they eventually signed on to the recall once the signatures were all collected, once it got on the ballot. Next slide, please. This is the executive director of SF Parents. They have a 501c3 and a 501c4. They have on their donor page, they list foundations. Some of them are the Amy Potts Foundation and the Michael Moritz Foundation.
Michael Moritz runs SF Standard, among other things.
That's right.
Mhm. Yep.
And also we found that her sister runs a company that provides employees to the district to help kids with special needs at a rate and charges the district twice the rate that they pay the regular educator staff. Next slide, please. Just a picture of one, probably might remember when they were collecting signatures to get the recall on the ballot. They were the same people. The same companies were hired by the Shesa recall and the school board recall to get people to sign petitions. And which is same billionaire donor network, collectors, and very similar narrative about why this was happening. Next slide. So here are some of the top donors. Neighbors for a Better SF, Bill Orbendorf. He was also one of the biggest funders of the DA recall. Top donor to the California GOP, Mitch McConnell donor, and donor to charter school candidates and initiatives. Arthur Rock, big charter school donor, $400,000 on a local school board election, kind of incredible amounts of money. The Chamber of Commerce, California Association of Realtors, David Sachs, tech billionaire, big Ron DeSantis donor. He led his like announcement on Twitter when he was running for office just this year. And actually some parents and myself, we went to his Pacific Heights mansion when he was hosting a fundraiser for Ron DeSantis. It was a Halloween theme right around this time of year, giant skeletons, people pulling up in Ferraris, and there was no media. There was no media there whatsoever. Just us, some parents. One of our parent friends was a videographer. She went right up to like the guests, these kind of the goons guarding the entrance, just asked them what they thought about Ron DeSantis. It was fun for us, but it was really, nobody knew about it. Some other donors, Y Combinator is a company that funds tech startups, and Gary Tan, who is now the Y Combinator CEO.
Question, Bill Obendorf, is he the guy who's on the board of UCSF who is funding the anti-Dean Preston stuff?
Yeah,
Anybody recall?
yeah,
Same
yeah,
guy,
Okay,
same guy.
yeah.
thank you.
Next slide, please. Here is the donor network. The quote at the top is from George Carlin. You might be familiar with it. It's the comedy sketch that he starts talking about public schools and how the super wealthy people don't want them. They don't want them to be good schools. But yeah, we have a lot of people here, the nonprofit and PAC level, a lot of groups you might be familiar with that have 501c3 and 501c4s. The people like Gary Tan, who is on the board of GrowSF. GrowSF is running the Dumb Dean campaign against Preston and against Chen. Gary Tan was a big donor to the school board recall. SF Guardians were the group that ran the recall really, and now they're doing some candidate training for next year's board elections. The list goes on. It kind of looks like one of those things in the movies or TV shows where the person has the photographs and the lines of yarn connecting and everything. But this is all documented, documented connections, donation records, their own websites saying these things. Next slide, please. Okay, so the recall happened. They were recalled. So what happened? I think a lot of what we were saying when we opposed the recall, we were saying like, look at these donors, like they want something, like
Right.
they're not giving hundreds of thousands of dollars away just or whatever. They want something in return. Sure, I'll give them the money.
In my experience, whoever is sitting on the board, and I have two SFUSD sons, my 33-year-old son keeps saying, get rid of everyone. The board does not know anything that the administration doesn't feed them. So if they say, we'd like to know these statistics, the superintendent directs his staff to provide statistics, and if you know anything about statistics, in the way he wants the board to see what he wants the board to see. And so I just want to share with you, it doesn't matter sometimes who's in those seats because the information that they get isn't always the full picture.
Well, and going back to the Board of Ed recall, I remember that some of the complaints had to do with how long the meetings were going. And in many ways, some of those who ended up being recalled were the ones who were trying to hold the board most, or trying to hold the administration, asking the most questions and holding them most accountable.
Absolutely.
That's a trick of theirs, is to never really answer the trick is to never answer, just like when we have an article and they say, oh, you didn't say that it was a benefit that the members would pay for. And we're like, we submitted that article in March. Don't you think you could have asked us about it since March? So yeah, they played this long game.
Absolutely. I mean, it's something we do is we watch every single board meeting and they've been a lot shorter. They actually pride themselves on ending them very, very early. So yeah, so after the recall, the mayor gets to appoint the replacement commissioners. She appointed 3 of them. And there was a prior breed appointee who stepped in to replace Matt Haney, who had gone on to be a supervisor. In April, they brought in a governance consultant named AJ Crabble, whose method specifies handing over authority from the board, even more authority from the board to the superintendent, and being very focused on test scores. The board selected the new superintendent, Wayne. But then in November, only 2 of the 3 appointees won the regularly scheduled election. This is something we brought up during the recall too, like, why are you having a recall in February when the same members are up for re-election in November of the same year? And the point of a recall election off schedule is low turnout. It's only the most motivated, most important people will turn out, not people who are also voting for president or senator who would come to the meeting and or come to vote and vote for the school board. One of the candidates named Ann Sue, she lost. She made some infamous comments about how Black and brown families don't value education, and that's why their test scores are so low. And this hurt her, and a woman named Alita Fisher edged her out in the election. Somebody we supported, she's a progressive. We like her. So now there's a 3 to 4 minority for the breed appointees, but the within the 6 months between February and November, the appointees changed the bylaws and locked in these test improvement goals, which are for 5 years and also every year. And it's locked in, and they're trying to deal with it right now. Maybe not very effectively. Next slide, please. This is the consultant they brought in. One of his mantras is about student outcomes, which is really test scores, but there's no record of improved outcomes in cities where he's brought his method. And we've heard from parents in other cities. Some of them compare him to like a cult leader. And he's in, we've heard from parents in Seattle, Texas. This method is kind of spreading all over the country. Next slide, please. Okay, so kind of where are we now? And these are kind of the narratives that you might have heard in the media, the issues that are being publicized by the administration. This is the administration's perspective, and also what you hear in the media. So you hear that there's a crisis, there's a budget crisis because of declining enrollment, because a lot of kids left the district during the pandemic. But in their own slides, it's a very small impact because the state sends a certain amount of money per student to each district, but it's only a small percentage of the overall budget. So the loss of like 4,000 students doesn't have a big impact on a $1.2 billion budget. Another line is there's too many teachers, but there's also a teacher shortage at the same time. There were about 100 teachers short at the beginning of this year, so it doesn't make sense. Too many school sites, so we got to get rid of them, and then everything will be better. Closing schools is really traumatic for the communities, for the neighborhood. They have never specified what the financial benefit would be of closing 5 schools, closing 10 schools. How will that money come back to the school?
In regard to closing schools, some of you might be old enough to remember when Polly was just over there. I came to San Francisco while they were knocking Polly down. One of the things back then Golden Gate Elementary School, Polly, this was before then, Ben Franklin Middle School. Schools in the middle of the city were once targeted because we had very low population of students. The net of that was that charter schools were able, but not with Polly because they sold that to the city for housing, to take those buildings because they can request them because they were empty. So when there was no more room at Wash for kids in the Richmond, and they said, go to O'Connell, parents wouldn't do that. But the charters were in the middle of the city. So it gave the charters a perfect opportunity to market themselves and say, it's only a 15-minute bus ride and we'll be there for you. And they're going to try to do something equally stupid again. And just because there were no, you need a middle. They never understood that. The consultants they hired said population growth is around the edge. It's in Chinatown. It's in the Bayview. It's all there. But when the school is overpopulated, people need a halfway place. No one wants their child on the bus an hour and a half each way every day. And nobody's buying their kid a car anymore. So it's all ridiculous.
Another thing you might have heard, SFUSD is facing a fiscal cliff. When, we look at their presentations and the board meetings, the SFUSD was only 3% over budget. And with $369 million just set aside in savings, just in case it doesn't bring very through. And 8th grade algebra. That algebra, you might think that algebra is canceled at SFUSD. There's no algebra for anyone. Actually, algebra is taught throughout elementary. And I saw it on my own kids' homework. I was like, wait, 1st grade math, that's algebra. That's pretty cool. Yeah, and the way it was before, when you had 8th grade algebra, kids were shunted into different tracks, like we call them, and it's very unfair and ineffective. Next slide, please. These are what we think are real issues. Teacher and staff pay. Nobody disputes that SF teachers have the lowest average pay of any Bay Area county, and way lower than most districts. There's some facilities, especially the ones in low-income areas. Famous one is Buena Vista Horace Mann, where they have toxic chemicals in the water and in their schoolyard. Administrative load. I mean, this is where we think is administrative load and a kind of budgetary incompetence too. But like you were saying, like the district, the board members would ask the administration, like, what is the percentage of budget that the administration is using? And they wouldn't answer the question. So the Board of Supervisors commissioned their budget analyst, and they did a very thorough investigation. And yeah, it's a quarter of the whole $1.2 billion budget, which is way higher than comparable districts, where around like 18% for their administration. And the Empower payroll system, which we have discussed already, it's still broken. It's still causing headaches. After 17 million just to fix it, not including like the initial setup, 17 million just to fix it. Next slide, please. Yes, Dr. Wayne. He closed school sites and during the pandemic, which I think a lot of people thought was pretty harsh. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Closed school sites, like he's trying to do here in San Francisco. Gave himself and management a raise and introduced a committee to close school sites at the start of this school year. A lot of the messaging from the district has been, we're not closing school sites, everybody relax, it's fine. And then one of the items on the agenda of the first meeting of the year was this committee that a lot of people didn't know what it was, but with our partners, we got informed and we had a big presence at that meeting and made them kind of change course, but it's still going ahead. Just an example of some of the solutions that some of the nonprofits are proposing. Apps. So something as a parent talks a lot about is we need to help the kids improve their grades. We need to help the kids improve their grades. So like, why don't we use this free app? It's free. Like everybody knows, we use these technology products that are free. They're not really free. They're mining your data and things like that. And it turns out the nonprofit, the app Upsheet was a part of Y Combinator, Gary Chan's company that funds funds apps and startups. Next slide, please. So here's the current situation. What we're facing going into next year. There are 4 seats up for grabs in next year's school board election, which represent the majority of the board. And the two commissioners who were appointed by Mayor Breed are safe until 2026. Next slide. And this is what SF Parents has been doing this year is training school board candidates. Next slide, please. Okay, so that was kind of the bad news. And now I'm going to turn it over to Brandy for the good news.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Noah. Noah just has an amazing, just his research, the research he's done is just amazing. It's a photographic memory, knows all these connections. Thanks for setting up so well for me. So we're fighting back. We're not going to let these people win. As Noah mentioned, we're the San Francisco Education Alliance. We are powered by Our Revolution. We launched in February 2023. We had the good fortune of Dean Preston speaking at our launch event. Our in-person launch event was a month later in March. We are parents, educators, students, elected officials, candidates, and leaders who believe in our public schools and community college and are fighting to ensure that our places of learning are fully funded, inclusive, and not privatized. And there have been so many gross attacks on our public education systems and neglect. We are an organization of love and inclusion. Next slide, please. All right, so we are an affiliate of Our Revolution. Our Revolution runs the largest progressive voter turnout operation in the country. The Bernie Sanders campaign started that up. Our story, Bernie Sanders launched Our Revolution, America's leading grassroots funded progressive political organizing group to empower everyday Americans to stand up to the corporate interests that seek to manipulate our government for personal gain. So I want to make it really clear. You don't have to be a Bernie Sanders supporter to be down with the Education Alliance. We have people in our organizing committee who are Warren supporters. That is not our litmus test, but we just love a lot of the things that the Sanders campaign talked about. All right. So yes, we have been busy. Noah does a lot of research. We have a blog, sfeducationalliance.com, where you can learn about that. We're shining a light on some of these dysfunctional and some corrupt things that are going on in our district in terms of grift, advocacy. One thing we did on our launch was talk about a City College ESL petition. So one thing Dean was really excited about, they shut down an ESL program here in the Haight-Ashbury at John Adams campus. City College has tended, unfortunately, to try to make itself into a junior college instead of really serving the needs of working class San Franciscans. So their quote unquote, definitely quote unquote rationale for cutting down getting rid of the ESL program at John Adams campus was that they had ESL programs in the Mission District in Chinatown. And we all know that immigrants are very busy having 2 to 3 jobs. And sometimes with the bus or with car, you just can't make it to Chinatown or the Mission. So there are no, as I understand correctly, no ESL classes serving the west side of San Francisco. And where is a committee at City College we're working with to try to get those classes restored and ultimately to expand ESL classes at City College. We we worked with Dean Preston's office to introduce a resolution of the Board of Supervisors in support of district-wide queer trans parent advisory council. The bullying that our queer and trans students have experienced is, you just see a rise on attacks of kids in the United States. It's not as bad as San Francisco, but all of that stuff comes here to our city. We canvass at farmers markets for Prop 13 reform. We sent a petition to the Board of Ed to stop school closures, pledge card campaigns with DSF to support striking teachers. So we're trying to change the narrative. We're new, we're getting started, but we've got some things going so far. We're really proud of that, the resolution we put before the Board of Supervisors, and that got unanimous support. So we're very proud of that. Next slide. So what's the plan? So we want to secure more money for California schools, Prop 13 reform, restore city college classes. We are standing in solidarity for UESF, SEIU, AFT, and their 2121 at City College and their demands for better working conditions and compensations, stopping school closures, and educator layer. So we talked about school closures. And we want to tell parents and educators, even if you're at a school that's not in danger of closing, they are also they're calling it resource alignment, which is a fancy way of saying we're going to cut positions. So I'm not sure how they could even really do this in good conscience. We've got such a staff shortage already. Noah talks about it is really a crisis level. I have a friend who sends their child to Buena Vista Horseman in the Mission. She told me that one day a couple weeks ago, there were 9 teachers out. The districts didn't have any subs, so they were combining classes. We had up like to 40 or 50 elementary students in a class that a teacher had to teach. It's like this all over the district. And I'm not sure, I came in a little late if you talked about this, Shelley, but the district is so short on staff that even when they hire teachers, they are not getting them processed through HR in time. So, yeah.
Thank you. Sorry. We have 2, one for K through 2nd grade and one through 3rd through 5th grade, special day classes, separate classes for children who are severely autistic with other complications. Our speech language pathologist, the person who helps the kids with speech, all children, whether in that class or not, she had to go on bed rest for her pregnancy, and we went 52 days now without any person to work on that with any of those children. And our K2 class has not had a teacher for 2 years, a regular teacher. And in the general ed classrooms, subs, we are supposed to arrange our own subs as best we can. The principal is frequently now covering the class because teachers teach in different styles. Even if a teacher leaves a lesson plan for a day, they're unexpectedly absent. No 2 2nd grade teachers are doing things the same way at the same time. So while you know what you could do with your kids, even if you split that other class in 2 and 2 teachers take it, it's not like a real day of learning in a normal sense. It's not good.
Right. And it's impossible. I never want to just come here and start conspiracy theories, but if I were going to privatize the school system, if I wanted to have ed tech apps instead of teachers, if I wanted to bring in teachers from an organization called Teach for America, which is funded by charter school money, they basically bring in college graduates who get 6 weeks of training, teach for 2 years, and then leave. This is what I would do. I would make sure that the public system will crumble because that makes it so much easy for school privatizers to swoop in.
Can you talk real quickly? We've talked about charter
Sure.
schools, and I know there are many people who are very knowledgeable about like a charter versus public, but
Thanks.
what are some things that charter schools can do that public schools are not, or talk a little bit about the differences?
That's a really great question. Thanks so much for asking. So a charter school, so schools that are public schools, traditional public schools have school site councils who are elected. You have basically 5 parent representatives and 5 representatives who work at the staff. Equal numbers. Thank you. And and I think at middle school and high school they have students on as well. So, but they equal numbers of staff and equal numbers of parents, family members. So there's a portion of the budget that this group gets to decide how is spent.
They make the recommendation to the principal.
Right, exactly.
Because, in the end, if the school screws up, it's the principal who gets fired, not the parents and not the teachers.
Exactly.
The school site council is supposed to be the community's input from both ends into how certain fungible money might better the community's vision of what the children should be learning.
And twice a year, the SSC or the student or student council or
School site council.
school site council meets citywide. And actually this Saturday is the first, and the guest speaker is Craybill.
Yep, they're gonna bring him there.
He's going to educate the school site councils on his government's.
Brainwashing.
method.
So
Yeah,
one thing with charter schools, though, like public schools have to take students, right? Residents, if you are a kid in the city of San Francisco, regardless of your needs, et cetera, a public school has to take them.
right.
A
And
charter school,
there's a little bit more the screen, it sometimes doesn't come as this, the screening, but they tend to kick out, cancel out and screen out students much more quickly than public schools. So basically get maybe students who have more needs and tend to, just by that cost more to serve. And so they're serving the students who are easier to serve, cheaper to serve. And that's basically creating a two-tier system. And also they are not governed by the school site council. They're governed by a nonprofit board that is non-elected, and their meetings are not public. When school site councils, their teachers are not unionized as well. So yeah, yes, that, and real estate industry really likes charter schools. One reason why the real estate industry has spent a lot of this, SFUSD is the second largest landowner in the city and county of San Francisco. I believe the Catholic Church is number 1. So charter schools will sometimes want to, real estate industries like them. They like to be landlords because they can rent out their facilities to other organizations and try to make money by that, but in that way. So that's a great question. Yeah.
So for example, the building in which Nordstrom's had been downtown is a whole property owned by the Unified School District. So in fact, one of their loss of revenues coming up shortly is because that building doesn't have tenants and the leasing company is not going to have income to pay the rent to the school district. But we know how expensive real estate is. And if they give up or sell any of those, most of their properties are not really attractive. School of the Arts on the McAteer campus is in the side of a canyon. I mean, some of the Hoover is kind of built sideways because the neighborhood wanted it not to be obvious. I don't really get why people aren't proud of schools. But once it's gone, once it's sold, we never afford to get it back. I mean, that is a really important, judicious decision. That's not a fly-by-night thing anyone could do.
Right. Okay. Thank you. That's important detail. All right. Next slide, please. Thank you. So Prop 13 reform. For 40 years, Prop 13 corporate loophole has robbed our schools and community of over $150 billion. So for those of you who don't know, does anybody know it? Remember when Prop 13 was passed? 1970.
79.
9, 8, 9.
79.
Okay, the late 70s, right. Part of Reagan energy. So what winds up happening, the average homeowner is paying 8 times what Disneyland pays in property tax. Voters passed Prop 13 to protect your castle or homeowners not sleeping beautifully candles. We've got Walt Disney, at least in Florida. Walt Disney World is paying its fair share of commercial property tax. Disneyland, ExxonMobil, all these big corporations all over the state are paying, a lot of them are paying the same dollar amount that they were paying in the late 1970s. What has that done to our schools? What has that done to our community colleges? This was obviously started by Reagan. It was the vehicle for this was anti-Black racism. I just have a quick book recommendation. I love this so much. I saw the author, it's City Arts and Lectures. Punished for Dreaming, How School Reform Harms Black Children and How We Heal. This talked about Prop 13 reform and all that's gone on in the last 40 years to really undermine public education. And it also mentioned the payroll debacle as well. Okay, so in that spirit, we are organizers, we are organizing. We go to farmers markets and ask people to sign these petitions. We work with an amazing organization called Evolve California. I think it's on the next slide, please. And we are sending petitions to Governor Newsom to demand that he support Prop 13 reform. He did. Prop 15, Schools and Communities First, almost passed in 2020. 48% to 52%. People thought it could never be reformed. And this doesn't touch homeowners. This would only affect commercial property taxes, $3 million and up. There's a lot of exemptions like farmland. Had this passed, out of all of this would have brought in $1 billion annually to the city and county of San Francisco every year, and also counties throughout the state. It would have been probably about $15 billion a year. It was, out of everything on the San Francisco ballot in 2020, it would have brought more money into our community than anything else. I think people, and I probably phone banked 200 people all throughout California. Here it passed by what, 75%?
Yeah.
I called voters, Democratic voters in the southern part of the state in Orange County. That's where all the money and scare tactics made. So this is one of our big pushes, is to try to get this passed. So with that said, I'm just going to let this float around the room. Please speak your mind to Governor Newsom.
One of the reasons they are
Yeah.
so successful, the corporations, is that the entity that holds the property is not a person. When we sell our house, it's reevaluated. They hold on forever, no matter who is the CEO, the CFO, the president. And so they evade any reassessment since the passage of Prop 13.
Okay. Thank you. That's an important detail. And if this were to pass, unlike a bond, hopefully it'll be on the ballot again. This doesn't tax individuals. This only taxes corporations. Next slide, please. All right, we are working with DSASF to ask people to sign pledge cards to support UESF and SEIU members if there is a strike. And I am going to let these float around. So what you can do, you can sign them, and you don't have to turn them in, but there is a QR code that you can use. I'll just start here.
Yeah, it's a QR code and a website
Yeah.
where you can sign up and basically just state that you support striking teachers.
Right, because there will be some pushback. We want to make sure that our educators know that we have their backs. Next slide, please. All right, I think I mentioned this before. We're continuing to rally the community to restore ESL classes at John Adams campus in the Haight. Next slide. And we hope that you will join us. Joining us, becoming a member, doesn't mean you have to pay anything. We keep half of our SFUSD families live in poverty. We want to make this really accessible. So all this does is let you know, it gets you on our mailing list. And that sounds kind of boring, but our mailing list is actually really cool because you have Noah putting out all this fascinating research and really kind of doing a deep dive and letting you know how the city works. So.
And we'll
Thank you
also
so
put
much.
those links in the online if they haven't been yet. So is that not it?
Yeah.
All right. So oh, I'm coming through the speaker too. So want to thank our guests. Also want to open up questions. I know there's a lot to take. A lot to take in, a lot of information. We might have some questions online. We might have some questions here. Or maybe everybody's ready to go get a drink. I don't know. But it's been a long day. I know Sherry is. Shall we? Excuse me. So any questions in here or any questions online? Anything you want clarified? Yes, Peter. Oh.
Where do you get good information about what's going on? I know you've mentioned some of your websites, but you've mentioned some of the bad information. And presumably, where do we get good information? And of course, as a fan of libraries and books, I'm glad to see you having a book. I could suggest some things too in general, but you know, in your realm, what's good and where one can get good info.
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. And Peter, big fan of your work, all that you do with our libraries. Thank you so much. We are a member of the Network for Public Education, which has is comprised of groups all over the United States. They have a website, they have a blog. They are just an amazing encyclopedia. I'm going to a conference of theirs in Washington, D.C. The Network for Public Education was started by Diane Ravitch. She has been a really loud proponent of stopping privatization, stopping the focus on standardized test scores. No, would
Yeah,
you say
she has-
they're a good?
Yeah,
They're a good source?
there's a great book. I listened to the audio book. It's called David Against Goliath, about how scrappy organizations of parents and the teachers have pushed back against these giant, massively funded organizations pushing charters and high stakes testing, where your school doesn't get the test score improvements, your school gets shut down. Your teacher doesn't improve your test scores, your teacher gets laid off. That's kind of what we're heading for. And she documents how in David Against Goliath, like how this has been happening in cycles ever since No Child Left Behind with George W. Bush. So that's a great place. I mean, there are some local news outlets, Mission Local, it does some good stuff. The Standard, we used to have Ida Mojadan, I forget, who was really great, but she just left the Standard. So, and as we showed before, it's a wholly owned publication by billionaire Michael Moritz, so not so great. Check our website. We're on Twitter a lot, which I wouldn't want to subject anybody to. It's
It's X,
but yeah, sorry, I refuse to call it that.
Yeah.
But
as you should.
there's that, and then there's school board meetings. Then you can get some information there. They're like live over Zoom, but it's always the administration's perspective.
And two news publications that do a fantastic job of covering school board issues. The Bayview newspaper has some really great articles. Also, El Tecolote has a good blog, articles, and fantastic podcast as well. Those are great sources.
I see a couple of hands up. Why don't we have Ken online?
Yeah, can you all hear me okay?
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, I don't have a question. I more just wanted to send a word of appreciation to Noah and to Brandy. The work that they have done is really Herculean. They are competing against a coalition of people that really have a lock on the flow of information in this city. People just really need to appreciate that Jill Tucker at the Chronicle and the superintendent and the superintendent's PR office are in constant communication with each other. And against that lock on information, Noah and Brandy have been able to get out the truth of what's really going on in our schools, in a city where honestly a lot of residents don't care that much about what's going on in the schools. And I just wanted them to know how much I appreciate all their hard work. It is thankless work that they're doing every single day. And they have very little help. So anything that we can do to help them, we should.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
I
Thank
see
you, Ken.
another hand up. Bianca, is that right?
Actually, it's Sahar Costello. I'm her chief of staff. First off, I just want to second everything that was it Ken who just said, Ken Archer just said. Yes, I completely agree with that. I wanted to ask the speaker, because we've been trying to contact OR lately. Can we presume that there is now an OR chapter in San Francisco, or are you from the state office?
Is the question, is there an Our Revolution chapter in San Francisco? Yes. I don't know if I made that clear, but San Francisco Bernie Kratz is a chapter of Our Revolution, a citywide group.
And we're
And,
an affiliate also.
right?
We're an affiliate. Yes, yes, exactly. Right, right. So yeah, we do some fundraising. We are a part of our revolution, and so they have a line item for us. The money goes to them, but we have the good fortune. We work with their national field director once a week. They give us feedback and organizing trainer. They've just been a fantastic partner to work with.
Yeah, when you go to our website and make a donation, it goes to our revolution. It helps to pay for the infrastructure that they've set up for us, like our website and our email program, our Slack and all of that stuff, which really helped us get off the ground quickly.
Any other questions in here? Yes, wait, let me get you a microphone so they can hear you online. Don't be shy. You're not on camera. You don't have to say your name. You can just ask a question. We appreciate.
I don't have anything to ask. I'm a teacher at Grattan Elementary School, and I wanted to say, on behalf of the staff and teachers at our school, we'd like to say thank you for all your hard work. It's been very difficult couple of years, disheartening. And when I come to these meetings, I sneak in. I always report back to my teachers and say there's still people who really care and who are very aware of the situations that are happening that we see all the time, but we don't feel like most of the city understands. So it was really lovely to come in and listen to everybody. Thank you so much.
Well,
Thank you. I just
Thank
want to
you.
say that means a lot to us. And we've asked gently some teachers to be in our organizing committee, without pressure. And they've all told us, and we all kind of knew this going in, they're so busy. You've had just a really tough few years, but we have probably 3 or 4 teachers we consult with on an advisory basis, like who we talk to. We probably spend several hours a week talking to these 3 or 4 or 5 teachers. So we work hand in hand with teachers, and that is really, if we're doing our job, we feel like we've heard comments, and so just please, also keep pushing us to do more and more. Thank you. Thank you for all you do.
One thing, here, let me give you this. So there's no feedback. One thing I want to mention, I think we're very lucky in this neighborhood. Mentioned that we have a bunch of schools. I think 4 of them are public schools. My kids go to one of the elementary schools here, and I think of the elementary schools throughout the city, the ones in the immediate area probably have a better staffing and support system than we're probably top 10%. I'm guessing Groton doesn't have a lot of vacancies, maybe a couple, but below average of what's going on in the city. Paras are short.
There's no sound.
So I'll mention what they mentioned is that what I said is not true in some ways, and that paras or lack of paras in many schools is a huge factor that people don't necessarily think of. I know you mentioned earlier that there were 100 vacancies. The numbers I saw at the beginning of the school year were like 400. And that I don't think even counts paras. And paras are often the ones who are adding the extra support for kids who are most at need. Yeah.
And a lot of the IEPs are out of compliance because we don't have para support. That's why we have been trying to fill the cracks. So every day we're stretched a little bit thinner, and I feel terrible for our support staff because they don't really do what they were hired to do. During the pandemic, they were also our healthcare workers because they were checking in on everybody. Teachers are constantly sick at our school and coming in because we don't get sub days for COVID anymore. So it's been like that at every school district or every school system and district. And I won't say that we're not fortunate. I feel so blessed and so lucky I love my staff and I love my school and I had taught her kids. But I will say it's a struggle for everybody and everyone's struggle is very different, but we're very much in the same boat.
Thank you. All right, we'll stop clicking on the spot. Very much appreciated. I don't need two. Any other questions? I don't see any in the audience here. Any online? No. Any other comment? Nate, you've been the silent partner here, helping me organize, so I appreciate that. Anything you want to say? Give some last words. Okay.
Thanks. I don't have anything to add. Thank you all for coming, Mike. I care about this a great deal. I just think we should put forward a vision of a fully funded public education. We're working on that. And I think just the parents and kids and teachers are aligned because we need resources for the school. That's what I think.
Right.
And yeah, so I hope we can work together on that.
Thank you. And hopefully we don't come to a strike. Hopefully we're able to avoid it. I'll give SFEA one more chance, and then I will let Shelley finish up with some last comments if you choose.
I would just like to thank you and Nate and Hank for inviting us. This was really great. Yeah, thanks for everything.
I'm pleased to have been able to come and share something with people who, in many ways, living in the same neighborhood, share the same values, and that you need to be informed. We're hopeful to continue to collaborate with people who are like-minded because the fight's got to keep going.
Great. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
I think we're good. You're welcome to hang out online as we sometimes do, or welcome to hang out here until 9 o'clock. But very much appreciate the new faces and the new topic and those online. And Bruce, thank you for helping host. And we'll see you all next month.
Thank you all. That was great.
Thank you.